there. I'm Beth, and this is Sarah. Oh, Sarah. It's all backwards. I run an account called The Dutch Mother and Advocates and Angels, and Sarah runs Rebel with Kindness and is one of our advocates as well. We're just here this morning. We're going to be doing live chats quite often. So we're here this morning to touch on circumstances that have touched our lives that we know are touching thousands of other lives currently, but are not being addressed. So yeah, I think we're going to start with Children's Mental Health Week.
That's right.
Today, and then go from there. I have been affected personally by the SEN world for probably like 9 years now. I've got a daughter. Say hi. Hi. Who is potentially on the she's definitely got ADHD. We're looking down the route of autism. And then 5 years ago, my daughter Lydia was born with significant disabilities, who has passed away. Sarah has also been affected by significant disabilities, haven't you? And your daughter Olivia passed away.
Yeah, I've been in the SEN world now for 21 years.
Crazy.
Olivia would be 22 in May. I suppose, in all honesty, it was for the maybe 20 years because she developed normally. I hate the word normal. Typically, until she was about 22 months.
Yeah.
And then went through a massive regression. So it was then I was thrust into a world that I knew nothing about.
Yeah.
With language that was detrimental to my mental health and anyone around me's mental health, and of people that should know better, really.
Yeah.
But I think that was it. You know, we're talking about disabilities and limitations that seem to go hand in hand when they don't have to.
No.
And that's, you know, for me, you know, I've adopted a child that's got very complex needs now, little Daniel. And again, I'm finding even what we're looking now, 15 years on, some people know better, some people don't, when it comes to the language and the way they talk about our children. And I think that, you know, that's something that a lot of parents have reached out to me and spoke about, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what we wanted to raise, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I do find sometimes the language starts from professionals, not always. But I think the first 2 years of raising Lydia, I kind of just went with it. I didn't want to cross anyone. And then when she was about 2, I was like, actually, this really, as I'd educated myself, I was like, this really isn't good enough. And I think once you highlight it, I think people are a bit like, oh, wow, I didn't actually realise that's how it came across. And I was like, well, that is actually what you've just said. And I think a lot of the time just repeating the sentence back to someone is enough to shock them to realise I've actually just spoken about her child like that.
Yeah.
I had to stop one individual and say, could you like delete Lydia's name out of that sentence, replace it with your own child's? And he was a bit like, he was really red. And he actually did apologise, and he was like, oh, I'm really, really sorry. And I said, look, I get that when you've been in a system and you're dealing with complex like needs every day, it can kind of harden you. But we're actually just people at the end of the day. And the language that is used towards her and towards me raising her, or Dave raising her, or Caitlin being her sister, impacts everything.
Definitely. I mean, to me, it started, you know, obviously we had the diagnosis, and the beginning for me, the diagnosis for Olivia was a relief because we'd been going through this crazy time. And, you know, we went through so much. Like, doctors did kind of questioning my mental health. You know, did I want to believe that there was something wrong with my child? No. You know, because it wasn't so obvious, and because she'd progressed typically, it was a bit of a shock. And they did, you know, when I think sometimes when they can't find answers, that's when they get a bit testy. But I also, you know, I guess sometimes, you know, it's done with the best intention.
Yeah.
in the sense of like, you know, when your family and friends start saying how sorry they are, and you're like, okay, I get where you're coming from, but I'm not actually sorry for my child. I'm still blessed by her.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I don't want to go straight into, you know, the diagnosis, and you know, there's no guarantee of this she's gonna suffer from this or suffer from this. And I think that's what you kind of need to remember. It's just nothing's guaranteed.
No.
And you know, we've always said, like, you know, we had a doctor that says like once she lost walking, she'd never walk again. Well, she did walk again.
Yeah.
So like, you know, our family motto is never say never. But it took me a very long time to get to that point. Like you said, you know, the first few years you just kind of, these are the experts, you know, these are the people, you know, so you trust. So if they're telling your child won't do this, or, you know, you kind of trust them, you know. And it is only when you go out and educate yourself and see other people whose children have achieved that, you know, that you can kind of step out of that. But, you know, you still find it in some, I mean, like, you know, a couple of weeks ago we had quite a scary episode with Daniel, and they were talking about ventilation. And I felt it was, you know, we went straight into the talk, you know, do we want this ventilation? Do we, you know, and I kind of questioned, like, would you be asking me this if this child was typical?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There'd be no question. Of course, you'd want everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're literally just kind of like questioning Daniel's quality of life.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you only see him when he's sick.
Yeah.
And I think doctors really need, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm so grateful for the NHS, and Daniel has some wonderful people around him, but they only see him when he's ill.
Yeah.
You know, they don't see the amazing stuff that he does when he's well.
No.
You know, and I think that's a big, you know, from talking to other parents, that's a big thing that they're all finding, is that when they're in hospital, that it's very much limits them of their conversations, rather than actually, this is what my child can do,
But
you know.
if you were to come to your house, for instance, and the only time I would come to your house and see you in bed with flu, where you can't raise your head off the pillow and you're not yourself, like, at some point I'd be like, well, she's unwell. You would see that as a typical person being really unwell, who, you know, can't function at their best at that moment because they're ill. And I used to find that a lot with Lydia. One of the remarks we had in hospital once, we had 27 PICU admissions for gastric aspiration onto the lungs, and we're talking like double whiteout, CRP over 400. Just her lungs were flooded with milk. She'd be absolutely fine for quite some time. She'd be feeding gastrically, she'd be feeding fine, and then we'd have this just out of the box, just like literally like a jack in the box onto her lungs. There'd be no warning signs, and we were just living on like high anxiety. And she got changed to NJ feeding, and she was like a different child overnight, straight away, like so much more comfier. I think the reflux had calmed down a lot. And we were 10 months without a hospital admission, which was, for us at that time, was huge. And she come back with, she'd been diagnosed with flu. And she was really, really unwell. She had to be oscillated for the best part of 2 weeks, which, if like, there's ventilation and then there's oscillation where it vibrates the lungs. If you're oscillated, you're ridiculous. I think you're really, really poorly. Her CO2 was off the chart. It was like it just said 20 plus, which was, for me, like, what? I genuinely didn't think that time she was going to come back from it. But we managed to get her really well. And then the doctor came to the bed, and I don't know why he said it, but he said, I hope that you can live with the weight of her disability now. And I said, I beg your pardon? And he said, oh, we're going to, and I said, what does that mean exactly? I was just so taken aback by it. And he said, well, you know, she's grown this type of flu, and then she'd grown a secondary pseudomonas on her lungs, which, if any person in the SEM world or medical world, pseudomonas is just it's like awful. It's just so hard to shift as well. So then they were talking about not treating it, and I was like, why would you not treat it? And he said, well, you know, because of her disabilities. And I just thought, wow, that is. So I ended up having to say, can you just come back to the bed space, please, because I'm a bit tired of this discrimination. And it was like, what and I said, she's just getting over this huge flu, which everyone has just said in this team meeting no one would have survived. She's almost like awake. She's trying to extubate herself by trying to pull the tube out. Why wouldn't we treat this smaller bug? Like, treat the reversible causes? And he was like, well, because I was like, because she's got disabilities. And he was like, well, I said, look, can I ask what colour your child's eyes are? And I think this was like, I don't know why I even thought of it. And he said, blue. And I said, right, you can't change the colour of his eyes. And he said, no. I said, so would that stop you from like making reversible causes like reversed? He's like, of course it wouldn't. I said, that's exactly how I see Lydia with her disabilities. I can't change those disabilities. I'm fully aware of what's available and not available as far as her disability goes, but I'm not willing to like cap the roof off on her. Yeah. And we had another year at home, year and a half at home with her of really, you know, well, she was great. Why wouldn't I want that for her? She didn't suffer in that time. She didn't, you know, she wasn't unwell. She just had a background disability, and it just starts from those little points. And I think every kind of ounce of discrimination is being openly discussed and targeted to the point that a lot of people are worried and fearful of what they say, even if they're innocent in saying it. But within the world of disability, it's like you can just get away with it. And it's that is absolutely like the language you have just used is absolutely abhorrent. Yeah. And yet no one seems to bat an eyelid.
I think for me, like, I mean, you know, there is somebody in the Premier League football teams that has Daniel's condition.
All right.
You know, and because obviously he doesn't have the learning condition, you know, the global learning delay or the cerebral palsy on top, when he has an illness, you know, he's treated with obviously with the full works. You know, there's no one questioning his quality of life.
No.
And that's what really annoys me is that, you know, actually, okay, Daniel has these disabilities, but his quality of life is pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, like, you know, this last admission was probably our first admission in like 10 months. You know, we've been in obviously for blood tests and stuff, but that's part of managing his condition. You know, I have to go for asthma tests.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? No one questions my quality of life because of my asthma, but that just has the same, in fact, it probably has a greater risk of death than Daniel's condition. Do you know what I mean? Because, you know, obviously asthma is a killer. And I think that's sometimes what really gets to me. It's that because you see his disabilities, you actually don't see the value in him.
Yeah.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, like I say, I do have a fantastic team around me. And it's only sometimes like a doctor will say something and I have to question it. And, you know, and it's like, you know, I questioned this, you know, if he had asthma, would you be kind of thinking, let's not ventilate? You know, and I think it's obviously been made worse at the moment because obviously the COVID conversations about who should benefit from respirators and different stuff has made the world quite scary for people with, you know, with children with disabilities and adults, obviously, because they seem to be less than. And I hate that. You know what I mean? It's like, how do we, you know, it's like the question I asked on Instagram a couple of weeks ago was like, how do we define value in a person? You know, is it by the job they have? Is it by how much money they make? Well, no, because some of the greatest people were poor. I mean, you know, some of the greatest people that have done so much into this world, like say Mother Teresa, she lived in poverty. Just, it just really frustrates me the way that people value life. You know, and we talk about, you know, children's education and different stuff like that, but no one's actually worried about SEN education to that extent.
No.
You know, the therapies to children, we've just been kind of left in this vulnerable state over this pandemic because we're not as, but but I think you know, it's so quick to go there because the baselines aren't where they should be.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's exactly where I'm at, that you can't openly speak about any other type of prejudice. Even talking about people being prejudiced, I have seen online a war breaking out from someone not defending but saying facts about a type of prejudice, and it kind of escalates and everyone gets really, really hot-headed. And as soon as you say, oh, you know, a child with disabilities, it's like, oh, well, you know, like, it's like, well, actually there is equal to the other person going through that prejudice, and they've had, again, like every other prejudice, they haven't had a choice in it. Like, they have just been born, they haven't done anything wrong. But yeah, I think it's really, really important because language defines everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It defines everything that we believe in, everything that we are as a person. You know, yeah, you've got to be, I can't explain it. You just, like, it just doesn't happen. And like, even when Lydia passed away, it was like, oh, just be grateful for the time that you had with her.
At least she's out of her pain.
Yes, no tubes anymore. That was another one that came up quite a lot. I just thought, wow, Dave was on the phone to someone that we felt had valued Lydia quite highly in her life. And said person said, well, what were you expecting?
Yeah.
This is in the first like 2 or 3 lines of, my daughter has just died. This is like the worst thing that I'm ever going to be able to say. And instead of saying, oh, Dave, I'm really sorry, it was like, I think the words were, well, it was always inevitable.
Yeah. I remember.
And that has broken down.
Yeah.
So many, it has broken down so many relationships. Because I've just been like, wow, that was your actual view on her the whole time.
Yeah, I find it, I mean, you know, I get cross over hospital visits, or the lack of with my child, you know, like, so, you know, I can be on the ward and a child can be in with a cut finger or something, you know, something that, you know, they're going to get over and they're going to be fine. And there's like a bed is surrounded by family and friends. But because we visit hospital often, it feels like, you know, that we don't need that same kind of moral support.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that's like, just because we have visit often, it's still not, you
easy.
know, no, in fact, it's harder because
and
it's not novelty. It's not novelty anymore. You know, I mean, like, you know, you can go for your first hospital visit and you think, oh, well, a couple of days, I can survive this. But when you're on week 4, you know what I mean? You just kind of want a conversation with someone different. But like, you know, I mean, we faced the same when Olivia died. It was like, well, you know, you had a good amount of time with her. Well, no, actually, you know, most children outlive us. You can't justify a good amount of time, or, you know, she's free from her disability. And don't get me wrong, you know, I'm glad that she's free from her epilepsy and all this kind of stuff, but she's also missing the gorgeous life that she had, you know, the cuddles, the different stuff. You know, it didn't make her death less.
No.
You know, and in fact, caring for a child 24 hours and then not caring for a child 24 hours, no one actually physically realizes that impact unless you're there. You know what I mean? I found myself ironing underwear and, you know, tea towels because I had to be doing something. My body just didn't know how to be at rest and, you know, and everyone was like, well, at least you can have some quality of life now. In fact, my life was quality, mate. You know, it was, you know, right now my life is fantastic. I might be exhausted. I might desperately would like, you know, more sleep but my life is wonderful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Daniel is completely awesome and brings me so much joy. So no, you know what I mean? It's not like, oh well, you've suffered this child, you know, this child while she's been here, now you can live life again. I'm actually quite living my life right now.
Yeah.
It might look different to yours, but that doesn't make it less.
I can honestly say in the 4.5 years that Lydia was alive, though, it was the best 4.5 years that we've ever had. Even though it was the hardest season for us, and it was a season of having to trust professionals and strangers with our baby. And it was a really hard season of sleep deprivation. It was basically like having a newborn for 4.5 years, that newborn sleep deprivation. And it was hard and it was difficult, but it was totally and utterly worth it for every second of being with her. And I don't think I'm ever going to get that again. It's a privilege that most people don't, they don't get behind the filter and actually see that. And yeah, it just grieves me to think that anyone could think that she was less.
Yeah.
When she was the biggest joy, and brought the biggest hope with her, and really united us as a family.
Honestly, you know, I never was prepared to have Olivia. I'll hands up say, you know, I knew nothing about disability.
No.
But she changed me for the better by miles. You know me, I learned to value the little things more than, you know, she was just the greatest gift. You know what I mean? There wasn't a day, even through all the pain, that I wouldn't go through again.
No.
You know, and I mean, like, you know, people don't understand my decision to go back into this disability world after Olivia. You know, friends who've got children with disabilities, they didn't understand my decision. And
Oh,
it's not that,
really?
no, they literally, you know, because, you know, let's be honest, you know, we've had this conversation. Just because we have a child with SEN doesn't mean we're going to be the same.
Oh, no, absolutely
You know,
not.
some of us, you know, are resentful the fact that we have to give up careers or whatever. And, you know, and that's everybody's journey. But for me, I loved every single minute. You know, I felt true value in who I was.
Yeah.
And, you know, we decided to foster children with special needs simply because I became aware of the amount of children in care that didn't need to be in units or residentials. You know, they could
hospital.
be or hospital, you know, because there wasn't families. We were like, well, we can do this. This is what we, you know, we love doing. And, you know, and I didn't plan to adopt Daniel. I had no plans to adopt at all.
You just fell into your family.
Yeah, he was meant to be, you know, and we jokingly say Olivia sent him, kind of thing, you know, because, you know, but again, it's the world has moved on. Don't get me wrong, it has moved on. There's some stuff that, you know, with Olivia, you know, well, why don't you put her in a home?
Wow.
It's never been suggested by Daniel,
No.
which is fantastic. But again, it's still, you know, life can be hard, but still have value. Yeah. And I think that's what people need to distinguish between. Yes, our life's exhausting, and yes, we have to care for them 24/7. But that's, you know, why it might make us tired doesn't mean that we're resentful from it. It doesn't mean that we don't want to do it. You do anything, you know, when you have a child, that's what you do. You know what I mean? I've got, like, you know, three typical-ish, they're not that typical, but three typical-ish, you know, pains in the bum daughters as well, you know, who are now, I don't know, 24, coming 23, 20, coming 20 next month. Oh my gosh. And, you know, I've had hard times with them. You know, we've gone through stuff with them. You know, teenage years are gross. I just, you know, I always said to people who foster, like when they foster teenagers, those are my heroes. But not special needs, those are my heroes. You know, because I found teenage years very hard. But no one questions their value.
No.
You know, but they have put me through some sleepless nights, through some worry, you know, and it's just
saying
really...
that though, when Lydia was still alive, I used to worry about Caitlin's life more than I did Lydia's, because she has got free choice to make mistakes that as a parent I don't want her to make, because I want her to just like live perfectly and not experience any type of heartache, or someone conning her, or someone like not like valuing her or abusing her. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just want to wrap her up. And I used to sit in bed thinking, oh no, like, as long as, like, with Lydia, I know she's got physical disabilities, and there was always like, oh, the stuff that I used to worry about. I just think like, baby goes out, guilt and worry goes in, isn't it? It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to matter. As soon as that baby has landed in your arms, it's guilt and worry. Like, but I used to worry about Lydia, like, what if someone was like abusing her? Would she be able to have the communication to like tell us? Would we know? You know, all those kind of things. And then equally, I'd be like, but Lydia would be with someone. She'd always have company. There would always be discussions and MDTs going forward that she was, you know, getting the best care, and like me and David advocate for the best care. Whereas Caitlin could make friends with a really bad like group of friends. She could, you know, like, you just go into like worst case scenario. But actually, on balance, I used to worry about Caitlin more, because she's got those choices of free will. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, you know, what if she was ever this, and then this could like mark her for life. And I was thinking, and then you have to come back and go, she's 9. Like,
I know, but they don't stay 9, unfortunately. You know, I always say, like, my girls, you know, my other 3 have probably gone through more heartache, stress, worries than Olivia ever did, and that Daniel ever will, because, you know, yes, Daniel's life is a little cocooned, but, you know, he won't have to deal with, like, I don't know, broken hearts, or people got to get through mummy first. But let's, you know, I'm not saying that he won't fall in love or different stuff like that, but, you know, it's like the world to him is a great place. He's not stressing about making sure he gets on this graduate scheme, or, you know, different stuff like that. And to me, that's like, in a way, it's a gift.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a gift. I've watched my girls tear themselves inside out, and I've still not been able to do anything because it's something that they've had to work through.
Yeah.
But like with Daniel, I tend to be able to fix it, which is brilliant. You know, this is causing you pain. I can get a painkiller. You know what I mean? But this boyfriend dumps you as a jerk. I can't fix that with a painkiller. You know.
And it's a consequence of an action that they've made themselves, isn't it? So it's kind of like, oh, you know, and trying to teach kids consequence, regardless of what age they're at, is just hard work.
Yeah. But like, I suppose on the flip side with Daniel is that with Olivia, she never, I mean, like I spoke about, Daniel has separation anxiety and attachment disorder, which is quite intense at the moment.
Yeah.
This COVID, I suppose, you know, we took him out of hospital where he'd been very lonely, very detached, you know, because he hadn't had that beginning bond. We gave him that bond, we created that bond, which was fantastic, because I didn't even believe that we could, you know, but he's very much bonded to us, his family, his friends. And then COVID just come along and took it all away.
And for him, stripped his basic routines.
But he also doesn't understand why. You know, he doesn't understand this COVID. You know, as far as he's concerned, my sister's not hugging me because
she's not.
Yeah, because she doesn't love me, whatever, not because of COVID. Sorry, Alan was dropping Daniel behind me. And so that's been really, really hard. And obviously to get people to understand that, because of his complexities, has been another barrier. You know, his last, you know, admission, part of the reason he had to be was going to talk about ventilation was the fact that he wouldn't take the oxygen into his lungs because of pure panic. You know, but I was trying to say, this is panic. This isn't a physical illness. He can get the oxygen into the lungs, because the moment I can calm him down, he will take the oxygen in perfectly fine. You know, it took a long time to, you know, to translate this to them, because they didn't understand that children with complex needs can have such attachment issues, you know. And it was only in the end we ended going down a route of sedation just to kind of calm him down that we saw the massive, you know, a change. And it was like, because emotions can impact physical health, definitely. You know, we've seen that with, you know, I've gone through my other girls, you know, suffering from they won't eat because they believe they're fat, or, you know, all this kind of stuff that the world does. But that's kind of accepted that could happen.
Yeah.
Where with Daniel, there was like a barrier. And having 2 children, I'm like, Olivia would never ever have had that issue because her base was secure.
Yeah.
Where with Daniel, you know, this is always going to be, it is always going to be an issue, isn't it? You know, people forget that with attachment, and, you know, we've spoken about this quite a lot, but, you know, mental health of a child can definitely affect the physical health.
Oh, absolutely. Caitlin's got a diagnosis of reactive attachment disorder. She isn't biologically my child, and she came to live with us permanently, properly, from about the age of 3, but we had a no contact order from the age of 6. So it's really been from the age of 6 where we've been able to really just work on this. Her reactive attachment disorder diagnosis came through at the age of 6 as well. So we actually knew, oh, right, like, it's weird, isn't it? You can parent a child for years and years and years, and you can know them the best you can. And then when this diagnosis came through and I read through it, I was like, the lights were finally going on. Like, oh my goodness, this makes complete and utter sense. And it's like parenting backwards. So like when she's like behaving outwardly, and she used to have violent outbursts, like she was completely expelled from school at the age of 4. She used to pull bookshelves down, kick out physically. They had she used to be physical. And from the age of about 5 or 6, once this reactive attachment disorder was like being discussed and I read up about it, I actually realised like everything that the school and people had put in place before that for naughty behaviour and outward behaviour. So like taking things away, like not punishments, but like reducing like hours or taking pocket money away or whatever kind of tactics that they put in place. The naughty step is another good, like that was huge when she was about 3 or 4. Like by the age of 6 then, once I'd read up on attachment, I was like, oh, she needs more input, she needs more love, which all children do. But when most kids have been hitting out, kicking out, biting, you don't tend to like embrace your child, do you? Typically you kind of like give them a telling off, warnings, you have to backwards parent and embrace them more, love them more. And I can see from family members and everyone going, well, like, you've got no boundaries, you're doing this all wrong. And actually over the last couple of years, she's 12 now, so the last 6, nearly 7 years, she is transformed into a completely like different human being. I mean, her reception teacher actually called her feral and said that like there was no hope for her. The educational psychologist was like, look, we really don't think that like she's gonna be able to integrate into normal society. And
I hate that statement.
Absolutely heartbroken, thinking, right, well, I've just got to do everything I can now. I've got to throw everything at her to be able to do this. So we put all these structures and things in place, and it just wasn't working. It was just getting harder and harder and harder until she had this diagnosis. And then we did everything backwards, and it just works.
I think they tried to. Sorry. I think they try to manage the behaviour rather than understanding the behaviour.
Yeah.
You know, what is the reasons behind the behaviour?
Yeah, and like the emotional investment, which was always there, but different, you know, because we were setting boundaries in place and like they were big into consequences. And the worst thing for Caitlin as a child with reactive attachment is facing the consequence head on, because
it reinforces the image that they have of themselves, doesn't it? Which is a negative image anyway. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, we parent therapeutically, and everyone says we all parent therapeutically. Well, actually, no, very differently. I parent, you know, Daniel, compared to my other children, even Olivia with complex needs, because Lydia never ever had the thought my mum won't be there.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Where Daniel constantly has that worry because literally because from the day one nobody was there. You know, where the normality of like the stages of the bonds that are made with our children wasn't made.
No.
And that's the biggest thing that people don't realize that. And they were like, well, we had this massively with our last foster child, no, my big boy, sorry. They were like, well, he's been with you 6 years, you should know by now. It's not about knowing, it's about the actual mental makeup of his brain, the physical brain.
And it's how the nervous system regulates itself.
Yeah.
It's all about regulation and emotional. There's a lot of emotional investment that we've had to put in with Caitlin. There's just a lot of stuff, and like whenever she's triggered, she doesn't get triggered a lot this day and age, to be fair. But then she's homeschooled at the moment. There aren't people saying like things that would potentially set her off that we don't know about. But generally, even now, there was something and she was really out of sorts for about 2 weeks, and I said to Dave, like, she is struggling, like, and I can't for the life of me work out where this has come from. So I just sat her down one day and I was like, we need to talk, like. And it turned out we'd watched Big Daddy. Seen that? With Adam Sandler?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And the little kid from Friends. And there was an adoption, like, issue.
Right.
And that's all it was. That is all that had set her off. But it was almost 2 weeks of spiralling. I could see she was, like, bubbling. She couldn't sit still. She was really struggling. I know the little things can trigger now and again. It's very... like, she's getting better at communicating as well. But the one thing I will say between Caitlin and Lydia is, even despite Lydia having all the disabilities, she didn't have any of this, mum and dad won't be there for me.
Yeah.
She didn't have any of the... I think she had a far better start of security. And you could really tell she was a lot more confident at the age of 4 than Caitlin. Like, Caitlin was an extrovert, but actually deep down she was quite timid.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna, Daniel's not back in school now, and not because of COVID, because of the fact that every time I leave the room he panics, and it's like we've come across conversations, well, you're gonna have to let him cry. Well, no, I don't. Obviously, even with his condition, that would be life threatening anyway, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to reinforce that someone's not going to be there when he needs. And, because all that's going to do is prolong. All that's going to do is take it longer.
And it will put his nervous system into a bigger fight or flight.
Yeah.
And then you'll be dealing with a bigger emotional wound, which can be nipped in the bud. I can see people, like Caitlin's fairly straightforward now, she has got her issues with not being able to sit still. I couldn't give her a list longer than 2 or 3 things to go upstairs with. If I gave her 4 things to do, she'd come downstairs going, "What you just say?" Like, yeah. She's very like scattered in her thinking, and she is a bit ditzy. But emotionally, like, the emotional regulation has really, really calmed down. She's like, there's no kicks to the face, I don't get black eye anymore, all that kind of behaviour that we used to see. But that's because of the investment that me and Dave have put in. And you can see people are like, absolutely like, why on earth are you telling her off for this right now? And I'm like, because I'm not going to change my parenting tactics regardless of whether you're here or not. I'm not here to impress you. I'm sorry, but her emotional needs have to come first. And if that means telling her off for showing off, that's what we're doing. And if that means taking her off into the corner and rocking her, even at the age of 7, like I think she was 6 or 7, and rocking her to help her emotionally regulate. We don't do any of that now, obviously, but she was just very delayed in her emotional
again, it's just, I mean, like, you know, going back to conversations about when people talk about our children, like, you know, I've learned to have a hard skin when people go, oh, you know, you're mothering too much or you baby him and different stuff, you know. I mean, I'm frustrated at times that Daniel doesn't show his potential in a public environment because too many people just close him down, you know. And I hear, even yesterday I was talking to his teacher and I'm like, you know, he does this, and you can hear I don't say doubt, but you can hear that, oh, bless,
Oh, of
mum.
course he does.
Yeah, you know, the mum wishes, you know, this, like we make these things up because we want our child to be something more. And it
Sarah's
just,
perception of Daniel.
and it just drives me crazy, you know. And then it's like, I'm so glad for video phones and different stuff now. So I'm going, look, you know, look,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And it's, and I think in every, you know, I'm not, regardless of attachment parenting or whatever, I think as a complex needs parent, we find that a lot. We have to find ourselves having to big up our child for them to have some kind of like value. You know what I mean? Like, you know, because we will celebrate the smaller things, like he's lifting his head today. That's massive. And the doctor's like, oh, bless. He's not doing it now, is he? You know, and you're like, well, actually, he doesn't perform on demand. But,
No.
you know, like a couple of the other parents were saying to me, like, you know, they, it's like they're being patronised when they're being spoken to, you know. And I was like, oh, she does this at home, and she do, you know, and they go, oh, that's lovely. And you're like, no, she does do this at home, and it's you know, they might not seem like value in the big scheme of, like, you know, she's not running for prime minister, though let's be honest, they'd probably do a better job. But you know what I mean? I know, typical. Sorry, shouldn't get political. But you know what I'm saying is, our children are judged by expectations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I find that, you know, with typical children as well, it's like, what are you going to be when you grow up? Well, let them grow up first. You know, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I was 3 or 4. You know what I mean? I was going to be a dancer, and I mean, I was a dancer, but that's irrelevant. But you know what I mean? My child went through being prime minister to being the Pope. You
And
know,
the
my
thing
girl.
is, I think though, like I wanted to be a jeweler when I grew up, and that's what I did. And then I had Lydia. I'm not ever going to go back to that now. Not because I don't want to, but because like the lenses, I've got a new lens in place, and that lens has focused me in a completely different direction. And there's nothing wrong with not wanting to go back to that. You know, I absolutely loved my job. I loved the customers. I loved all the people that I worked with. But I've got a new, I would say the lens is still there for everything that I've done, but a whole different lens has come in now, and it's given me a different clarity of where I want to go with my life. And there's nothing wrong, you know, I'm 33. For some people that might be too late to start over. For some people they might not have even started over at the age of, do you know what I mean?
I got my degree at 40, so you're all right, mate.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? Like, but even then, I'm not saying to Caitlin, I'm not training Caitlin at the age of 12 now to go pick what you want to do for the rest of your life and then stick with it. You know, my parents have gone, this is brilliant what you and Dave want to do now. You know, Dave's studying theology at the moment to become a pastor at 33. Some people have already got a church under their belt for 7 or 8 years by now. Other people don't even become like a Christian until their 60s or 70s. Do you know what I mean? So that's another thing though. Like, where did this race come from? Where did it come from? Like, you have to do this at this time in life.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that affects all children's mental health. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, like I just wanted my girls to grow up being happy. You know, when it comes to choosing a career, do something that you love.
Yeah.
Don't look at the finance side of it. Do something you love. I mean, I'm never going to be rich being a foster care. Let's be honest, kind of thing. But like, you know, and I'm not quite sure. But anyway, another story. But like, you know, I loved being a foster carer. You know, I loved being a foster carer. But you know, they're going into careers now, you know, that they love. I mean, my youngest went to university to do special educational needs, but I then got offered a chance to do an apprenticeship in an actual special needs school, and she jumped at it. And she was so worried about telling me that she was going to leave uni. And I was like, university is not for everybody.
No.
You know, you're going to university to do the job that you can now do as an apprenticeship, go ahead and do it, but I can't be this, I can't be that. But are you happy? She I love it. And I was, well, that's all I want, and it, and like my eldest is, I mean, I don't know where she gets her brain from. I mean, she's very bright. I mean, she's just been accepted onto the civil service graduate scheme, which is incredible. I'm so proud of her.
That's
But
amazing.
her brain focuses like so different. And like, I worry about the mental health of her, the stress that she puts on herself. But I think she's one of those that actually thrive in that environment, which, to be honest, I used to before Liv, kind of thing. I was a workaholic.
Yeah.
I loved it. The next stage, started on this. I want to be better. I want to be noticed by my boss. I want to be, bring this to the table. It was always what I could bring to the table. Where having Olivia was actually, what? Let's live life and be joyful.
Like now. And
Yeah,
today.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I tortured myself in my teens with expectations, and I hand on my heart, I was not happy because I never felt good enough. Being Olivia's mom and now Daniel's, obviously I still have aspirations and different stuff, but I'm just so happy, proud to just be in that role.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's and as a carer, yourself, you get looked down on, like, oh, well, you can't work or you can't do this, and I'd actually like someone to actually look what us carers do daily. I mean, with personal PAs, with nurses, we do all the medication, with the carers, with the biggest advocates that we can be for our children. I'd like someone, and that's 24 hours a day, not
And you
like,
can't afford to fall behind or fall apart
no.
either. You just haven't, like, you get in the shower, you have your cry, and then you get on. Like, you wipe your face and you get on. You can't afford, you have to be mentally, it's okay not to be okay, I'm not disputing that, and like, you have to check in on yourself emotionally, but also like you don't have a choice. We were having a discussion about self-care, weren't we? Like, how it is like, oh, have a self-care, put the kids to bed and just go and have a glass of wine. Well, actually, that is really, really bad advice. If you're not in the SEM world, don't advise SEM parents how they should be looking after themselves. I think I got into a bit of a rant about that last week. There's nothing wrong with having self-care, like a bath, shaving your legs, like putting a face pack on, like even journaling and being real and honest with yourself. But you can't afford, it's not a case of putting them to bed and just hoping for a better tomorrow. Because, if your child is having a seizure or needs suction, like, Lydia was ventilated overnight, we couldn't ever leave her. Like, it wasn't a case of like, so I learned, like, this is her old bedroom, so like Lydia's bed used to be here and then there's a sofa there, so I learned I used to go and have a face pack there and read a magazine while she was in bed. There are ways of being able to look after yourself without.
But I think self-care has to be what suits you. Otherwise, it's not self-care.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean, someone said to me, oh, have a day away from the children, do this. Well, actually, that was never something that I ever wanted, kind of thing. So that wouldn't be self-care to me. That'd be quite torturous. I enjoyed spending time with my kids, but like, there was times that, you do want time, but I think it has to suit you. I mean, going and having a face pack for me, great. I'll be dealing with 2 weeks of skin breakouts, kind of thing. So I haven't found one that I'm not allergic to, but that makes me feel uncomfortable, kind of thing. So having a face pack for me is, but also when people say out the SEN world, they don't realise the pressure. It's like, you haven't got time, you're not making time. Can I fail at anything else? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, especially in this COVID time where we are pretty much 24 hours, 7, someone saying to me, well, just put the kids to bed. And, the fact that I can't can sometimes make me feel guilty,
It makes you feel worse.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is what I'm saying, like, there are ways of carving out time for yourself for self-care, but without it impacting the rest. That's what I mean. Like, I could just put a face pack on but still attend to her, like, because it was on my face, I could still put my gloves on, I could still get on and do what was needed for her. but without leaving the environment, because a lot of the answers to self-care are leaving the environment, getting a full night's sleep. It's like that physically can't happen for a lot of people.
Yeah.
In our world, a huge percentage of people that can't happen to. So don't try and like you said, don't try and tell people. Maybe have a sit down and think about what you need. Sometimes it's just reading a book and getting lost in that, isn't it?
Sometimes, you know, self-care for me is curling up on the sofa watching the Yorkshire Vet with Daniel in my arms. There's nothing better. Do you know what I mean?
He loves
And
that as well, doesn't he?
well, he loves it, and I've got him cuddled in my arms, and I'm watching a program that I enjoy as well, which I didn't know I was going to ever enjoy, but I do enjoy now. That's self-care to me. You know, self-care to me is opening a nice pack of biscuits or something. You know, just it doesn't. You know, an idea of being at a spa day like fills me with like dread, kind of thing. You know, walking the dog is my new self-care thing. You know, I love going for a walk, you know, and I do leave Daniel there, but today my
like,
plan is to take him with me.
Yeah.
You know, but it's still
even
self-care.
like cooking from scratch sometimes.
Yeah.
The child can be sat next to you, behind you. Do you know what I mean? And you can just cook something and you know at the end of it, you're not just eating junk, because I know a lot of us are guilty of doing that because time is so limited.
I always say, you know, if you want to think of how to love on a family with children with special needs, send them a voucher for Just Eat.
Yeah.
Send them a voucher for a coffee. Do you know what I mean? So just things like that, you know what I mean? It's I mean, that's one of my big things in hospital, kind of thing, you know, eating. You know it's like it's so expensive to eat in hospital, but most, you know, I sit on the hospital ward, and I sound really catty right now, but the parents will go off and have some dinner for a couple of hours, and their child's quite happily playing on their iPad or something. I can't do that.
No,
you know, so I end up eating junk because it's A, it's what I can afford, and B, it's what I can literally carry, you know, hold. And it's like that would, you know, when someone's in hospital, send them a Just Eat voucher so they can order or Deliveroo, whichever. I'm not promoting Just Eat, sorry.
No.
Kind of thing. You know, a food voucher.
I know what you're saying.
Drop them off a sandwich or a salad from Marks and Spencer's. Do you know what I mean? That's where self-care can be, you know, or ask the parent, you know, instead of saying, well, you should be doing this, or I've sent you a face pack, why haven't you used it? Or, you know, I've sent you these crystals for the bath, you know, why haven't you used them? Actually go, well, what would bless you right now? You know, what, you know, obviously I can't, especially with COVID, I can't come watch a child, and most of them can't watch our children anyway. You know, we don't have the, you know, the luxury of grandparents popping in while we go shopping or whatever, due to medical needs. But, you know, just ask them, say, what would bless you right now? Would it be, you know, an Amazon voucher for a book? Would it be, I don't know, a bag of Maltesers? Do you know what I mean? Just, I remember, that's why I said it, sorry. But, you know, it's...
I think one of the best gifts I was given in hospital whilst I was in there caring was my auntie came, and she came with this tight sealed bag, tight sealed, you know, like lunchbox full of ham sandwiches, freshly made, you know, like really fresh back, proper butter, loads of ham. They were stuffed, and I think she bought 6 2-litre bottles of water. And we've had some lovely gifts in the past. I'm not disputing that, and I'm not saying that you know, but at that time I was like, oh, I can actually eat something that's homemade without like without that canteen like, hot slop.
Kind of, definitely.
Like just something cold and nice and crisp. And she probably has completely forgotten that she ever did it. But you know, it was just such at the time, just like, oh.
Yeah, my sister-in-law said to me, can I bring you something in one day? And I want a ham salad sandwich.
Yeah.
She went, you said, no, I'll get you. I went, no, I want a ham salad sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm desperate for something that's, like, say, fresh kind of thing, you know. And obviously COVID makes it even harder at the moment when you're in hospital, because you can't swap the parents and, you know, one parent and stuff. And it was just, I kind of think, you know, it's the language around how you speak to parents with SEN. It's just so important, because you can be doing more damage. You know, telling someone they're not getting self-care is actually quite damaging.
You need to be looking after yourself more. Yeah. And like, I appreciate the sentiment, but there literally isn't. Like myself and Dave, when Lydia died, it was really, really hard to accept that we could just go out in the car.
Yeah.
That we could just put our shoes on and go for a walk. I didn't expect, like, oh, you can just do that. Yeah. Have you seen that Michael McIntyre clip where he's like, before kids, you can just go da 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 da, yeah. And then when you've got kids, you're like shouting at them to get their socks and shoes on. Well, we had like oxygen tanks to think about, feeding packs, like equipment, emergency meds, like the list went on. Yeah. There just wasn't time. There wasn't time to be able to do all this extra pressure stuff.
But that didn't mean that our time was less.
No, but there just wasn't the time to be looking after myself more. Oh, you need to be aiming for like at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Well, like I think it took me 5 years to get that.
Yeah.
Unless I was ill. But yeah, it can be a bit more, oh, you've really let yourself go. Like, can you not get your eyebrows done or your hair done? Like, when was the last time you had a haircut?
I know.
But
it's just I think people think that they're encouraging you to look after yourself, but at the end of the day, I'm quite capable. I'm a grown-up. I can look after myself when I need to. But the fact is, we all have priorities. No one says to a newborn baby mom, well, they better not say, I'm sure some people do, oh, a week into it, oh, you've got some sick on your shoulder, because everyone expects that to be the case. You know what I mean? And so that's like our lives 24/7. I mean, I remember once I visited a friend up in by Liverpool, and I went into the hotel, and we was only staying the one night, and it was just me and Dan. It was our first solo trip.
Oh,
and
cute.
I got into the hotel and I was bringing stuff in, and she was like, you are only here for one night.
I know.
And he was like, they was policing me, and I was like, this is what I need for one night, believe me. And I mean, the night was hilarious. Well, not hilarious, but let's just say 2:00 I had the police knocking on the door because I tried to put Daniel's NG back in, and you can imagine the joy he was having. So they were checking on the welfare of my child, which is fair enough. But it was. But it took me a long time, and and I do worry about new parents with children with SEN who have like trying to find their feet for when good advice is given to them. It's like, your
what
world is.
What advice would you give to a person starting the SEN today?
First of all, don't swallow all the negatives. Like, your child is your child. You know what I mean? Don't stop having expectations. Our family motto is never say never, and we still do. Secondly, you've got to do you. I probably don't parent the same as you. You won't parent the same as me, and that's perfectly okay. If having respite for a week or whatever is what you need, that's fine. But if actually, like myself, that would bring me so much anxiety, then that's okay as well. You've got to suit you. Be organized, start from the literally. I sometimes feel like I'm running a business when I deal with Daniel.
Sometimes you have to.
But I've kind of embraced that. So buy a nice pretty diary. You know what I mean? That's my self-care. Yeah. I've got a nice, pretty diary to put all my paperwork in.
Pens.
Yeah. I love nothing more. Like, you've got the Advocates and Angels folder, which I think is fantastic. And I've got a version of, that I want to add to now yours. But, I've got my own version. And I love it when I'm prepared, when doctors ask me a question, be prepared. I think that's kind of thing, it's second nature to me, but like now, but at the beginning it was like, I was checking Daniel's care plan every 2 seconds, but put it on pretty paper if it makes you feel better. Just do what makes life easier for you. If it means that, you have to stop doing other stuff to make your life happier, then stop it. Do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, your child is, we have these children, regardless of special needs or what, but, until they're grown or they don't grow or, forever, you have to find out what fits you. You know what I mean? And that's what really took me a long time, because I wanted to stay being the parent that took my children to here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, my girls were so busy. I feel sorry for them at times, kind of thing, because I kept thinking that's what they needed. And it was only when we took the foot off the gas, and in fact, I got ill, that my girls started acting, well, actually, I didn't like that, or I didn't like that. You know, you don't have to be doing everything.
Typical.
I was like, why didn't you say something? He said, well, you seem to wanted me to go. And I was like, no, but I just wanted you to have everything, you know, all these experiences. And they were like, yeah, Mum, I'd rather sit down and play on my game, or, you know, my daughter did love ice skating. And if you have got, I think that's, you know, if you have got siblings, you know, your child with SEN has got siblings, there's that guilt, isn't there?
Yeah.
Of like, you know, and I had to, like, you know, one of my daughters was a massive ice skater, and my other daughter was a singer, and I would put time in to go see them there.
Yeah,
It
you have
wasn't,
to.
you know, you do have to, you know,
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing. You know, you have got more than one child,
Yeah.
and that, you know, the children, you know, we're saying to value our children with disabilities equally. We also have to remind ourselves to value our children equally. You know, just because this child doesn't need venting or tube feeding, they still need parents.
Yeah, of course I do.
You know, and I think it's hard finding a balance.
Yeah.
And, you know, don't beat yourself up while you know, you're going to mess up. But believe me, you know, typical children, I've messed up way more. You know, way more. You know, I'm sure my daughters they quite happily share some horrifying stories when Mummy lost the plot, and, you know, and different stuff. But hey, I'm human, and I think that's the biggest thing. Is, you know, I always say give yourself grace.
Yeah.
That's from my perspective, obviously, as a Christian, and give yourself grace. But, you know, from a perspective, is just be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
You know, we have more expectations on ourselves than we ever do on others. You know what I mean? And I think that was the biggest thing I had to learn, was that I couldn't be all things to everybody.
No.
But in fact, they didn't need me to be all things at all times. You know what I mean? Just pocketing little special time with each of them made them all feel valued. And even your marriage as well, you know, or partnership, whichever it is, you know, you do need to put time on for them, to talk to them, or find. My second probably is find your community.
That was my either one, like I would say, in my top 5.
Yeah, and again, like I said before, your community won't mean every special needs parent out there.
No.
Because, you know, it won't mean that it'd have to be the parent with the children with the same disability.
No.
You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be. I mean, I was blessed. I found some wonderful Rett parents. Olivia had Rett syndrome,
Yeah.
you know, but there's some Rett parents there that I know we don't get on. And that's fine, because just because we're Rett parents doesn't change who we
No,
are.
I would say the Advocates and Angels support group on Facebook, they're all quite similar. Just no nonsense, aren't they?
Mm.
But that might not be for everybody. Some people might prefer, you know, either a quieter group or a more dramatic group, you know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be SEN parents, does it, either?
No.
I think our group as a whole is probably just sensible, and they're quite good at signposting, aren't they? But it doesn't necessarily mean that group will tick all the boxes, and you don't have to be exclusive to one group either.
And you can take time out of a group as well.
Yeah.
You know, I've had moments where, like, I actually can't process everybody else's. This sounds awful, but, you know, everyone else's worries and concerns. Yeah. I had to take a step away because I need to just focus on mine. Yeah. You know, and I used to feel guilty for that, because I'd come back and, like, this had happened to somebody else, and I'd be like, I'm so sorry, I didn't realise. But actually, at that time, my self-care was just staying off social media.
Yeah, and and
that's fine. You've got to, I think, you know, surviving this life right now within COVID is very different to surviving it outside of COVID.
Definitely.
And I think, you know, we all, you know, I was so upset the other day because I hadn't achieved something that I wanted to achieve. And I'm like, but in the second, you know, I had to give myself a kick up the backside, really, because I'm surviving.
Yeah.
You know, we come out of hospital with Daniel, and I was exhausted. And, like, normally, you know, I'm one of those people that I deal with at the hospital, and then I come home and then have the breakdown. Like, I process it after. Well, actually,
delayed trauma.
Yeah, well, with Daniel, I was actually processing it in there. I couldn't pretend.
No.
because I had no reserves, because obviously living in this COVID time, we've had no care since last March. You know, I am physically and emotionally exhausted. And being in that trauma with Daniel, I couldn't process it any but openly. And like, but then when I came back out of hospital, I beat myself up badly for that. I was like, oh, you know, you cried on that doctor and you did this and you had that panic. And I was like, yeah, okay, but look at the situation. Give yourself a break.
And I think as well, like when you're on hospital admission 5, 6, 7, right? You see the people coming in at hospital admission 1, and they're crying and falling apart over the fact that their child needs a cannula.
Yeah.
You know, and once you've become accustomed to the way that the hospitals are, it's like, oh yeah, another cannula. Yeah, okay, and this and that. And sometimes I remember there was one hospital admission we had, I think it was like 2 years ago, and we were in for Mother's Day. And apart from last Mother's Day, we'd never had one out of hospital. And I don't know why, it obviously must have tipped me emotionally. I spent the whole night crying, the whole night. The nurses ended up finding me a cubicle because Lydia was in HDU. But I think I'd had 3 or 4 nights of zero sleep in there as it was. Or if I had been home and Dave had been in with her, you don't sleep anyway, do you? Because you're worried. And they ended up finding me a cubicle, and I must have slept like solidly for about 5 or 6 hours out. I must have just been out cold. I was so exhausted. And I remember the nurse Debbie, she's amazing, one of the best nurses we've ever dealt with. She was like, "Are you surprised? Are you actually surprised?" I'm like, why can't I keep it together? Like it was literally just pouring out my face. She's like, "Beth, this is like 22 months of trauma. Like, and you've had one night of crying. Yeah, great. You know, don't worry about it." And I think there is this expectation that over time you just have to become accustomed to it. And actually, like, the environment isn't normal.
Yeah. And I think that was something that I kind of realised only in this last admission, was that, you know what, it is, I think as you become a special needs parent and you do have like numerous hospital admissions, people expect you to get used to it.
Yeah.
So you pretend that you used to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you put this facade on that, you know, I'm in control, I'm fine. But at the end of the day, our babies are still being cannulated. You know, they're still being prodded with needles to try and find a vein. They're still in pain. And like, you know,
and
so
it's not that you care any less. It's just become another, like a semi-level of normal, hasn't it?
But if that time that, you know, it feels fresh, that's also okay. You don't have to be this strong in controlled SEM parent. You know, one of the nurses last time for me was like, I'm obsessed with Daniel's fluid chart, his fluid balance. He just keeps us out of hospital, so you know. And they took it off me because they put in my maintenance fluids, and I was like, I was a mess. And she was like, let us be the doctors, let us be the nurses. You can just be mom. And actually, I can't. Mum does keep hold of the fluid chart, and so I struggled for 2 days, like of like, you know, trying to just, okay, but what's his balance? What's this? And they were like, it's fine, we're keeping an eye on it. And it was only when I spoke to his consultant that said, and she said to me, what's his balance? And I was like, I don't know, I don't have the fluid chart. She went, well, how are you coping? I went, I'm not. She went, well, go and get it blown back. She went, you know, it might be that some people, you know, some parents that when they're in there, they're quite happy to hand over all the care to their child. It might be a break. For me, I needed to know. And like I was trying to be this person that didn't need to know. And I was failing terribly. And it was making me so anxious. It was making me so sick. And when his consultant said, just go get it. Just do it anyway. Even if they do their own, it's fine. You just, you know, that's what you need to know. And in fact,
sometimes it's controlling what you can as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be able to just feel a bit more like regulated, even though those numbers aren't going to make you feel any better or worse. There is just like when the situation is spiraling out of control, and I firmly believe in getting organized. And if you can be kind to your future self, whether that's making, whilst you're doing dinner one night, make 3 times as much and put the rest in the fridge for tomorrow and the day after. Just little like cheap ways of being like investing in.
I can't do meal planning.
No.
I've tried so many times, cried both, many times, and then I can get to like Wednesday and say I'm doing cottage pie. I don't want cottage pie. You can
Oh,
guarantee I won't want
really?
cottage pie. And it's like, and they waste so much more food. And you
Yeah.
know what? And that's actually something I've beat myself up on for not being able to meal plan.
Oh,
Really,
no.
it's
I
like
think
that.
it really has helped us from a cost point of view. It's helped us from whatever. But I found like if I'm doing a big batch of bolognese,
Yeah,
do a bigger batch and then put the rest in the freezer. Just to like, it's just those little things to kind of like get one step ahead, but not like, so you
yeah.
don't have to cook in 2 or 3 days time in the same way. Or if you do cook in 3 days time, put that in the freezer as well, you know. It just to like get a bank of,
Yeah. But I
just getting
think that,
that organized.
but again, I think that's what we've been trying to say, isn't it? You know, you've got to do what works for you. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like meal planning will never work for me, kind of thing. I don't even know what I want in the morning, what I want for my tea, kind
Oh,
of thing.
really?
I'm one of those people. I just don't, and so it's never
Do
worked
you
for me.
have to eat what you fancy eating?
Pretty much because then I don't enjoy it.
Oh,
Like,
really? We
I've
just eat
tried
what's
this.
in front of us.
Yeah, and that makes me probably sound so privileged that I can do that. It's, you know, it's not. I can't afford not to eat this way. It's just that I know very well that if I, like say, if I've cooked something and I don't fancy it, I just cannot eat it. It's actually like I feel sick rather than eating it. It's something psychological with me that I know that. Probably growing up being told to eat what's on the plate and put up with it, even if it did make me sick. But you know, irrelevant. Childhood trauma. Oh yeah, beetroot. My mum was convinced that I'd learn to like beetroot. I don't. But you know,
I
and
quite like it.
you know, it's what works for you,
Yeah.
and you know, and like I was very big with the girls. You know, we'd always have dinner. You know, a sit down meal. We sit at the table every night, and you know, as the girls have grown up and left home, it's okay that I don't sit at the table every night to eat my meal. You know what I mean? It's trying to eat my meal at 5 o'clock in the middle of Daniel's meds is probably the worst time possible. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So you know, you move things around. Sometimes you can eat with your family, sometimes you can't eat with your family. You know, I think this is the biggest thing I've learned over. I mean, come on, I'm a slow learner. It's 21 years I've been in this community, but I'm learning that my life has to be unique to me. I can take bits out of yours or bits of your recommendations and work it for me, but sometimes it won't work for me.
No, it
You
won't
know,
work for everyone. But
and I
at the
think
same time, if you want to be strict and have firm boundaries because that works for you, do that
then
as well.
that's it. You know, I'm very
It's
strict
hard,
in,
isn't it?
yeah, I'm very strict in other areas, like kind of thing. You know, pajama day. I can't do pajama day.
Oh, really?
No way. No, you up? You put some clothes on. You know, if my child's in pajamas all day, I feel like I was neglecting him, which I know is so wrong, but I know that's me, and I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest lesson that I'm learning. You know, and it took me a long time, is to realise do what suits you. You know, I mean, even in the middle of the hospital, I have to get up in the morning, brush my hair, and put some makeup on. I'm exhausted. I am dead. Why am I putting makeup on? Because that's my armour, I suppose. That's why I feel like I need to cope with the day. If it might be for somebody else that they can stay in their pajamas all day, that's fine. But if I meet that doctors and ward round and I'm in my PJs, I feel like I failed.
Yeah, that's why we made the Chrysalis care packages, to be honest. Probably like from my own self perception, that I remember going in at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and like the stress causes you to just like, my hair was all like greasy, and I hadn't got into hospital with greasy hair, but I was just like, oh, just really like not sweaty, but just like
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I felt like I needed a good wash, you know, that kind of feeling in the morning. And I went down to the shops at the front of the hospital, and it was like £7 for like a toothbrush, a toothpaste, and I think like no, I didn't buy soap because they've got soap in the hand dispensers. So I was like,
Yeah.
right, I can save money there, because like living on carers allowance is a pittance, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was like a stick of deodorant, and it came to like £7.50. which for me, when you have to watch every penny, I was like, wow, that's a lot. But I was like, well, we're in an impossible situation. Got to the scan bit, and my debit card had come out the back of my phone case, or I'd left it in a pocket of another coat. I can't remember. And I was like, I actually can't even buy, even though I'm being ripped off, I can't buy it because I haven't come out with my debit card. I'd obviously taken the phone because I'd been on the phone to 999, so they must have just come in my pocket in my, I think it was pajamas or leggings or whatever I was in. And the consultant came to see us, and I can't remember what had happened on this admission, but he'd come to see us, and it was a neurologist, and he was talking. I've been waiting ages to see him, and all I could think about was I haven't brushed my teeth.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, I don't feel comfortable enough. And he was talking about Lydia, and I was like, oh, I just feel, I can't explain it, just didn't feel right in my skin. And they'd offered me a shower, but there was like nothing to be able to shower with. And the nurses were like, actually, this is quite a common thing. So we started sending some emergency care packages up to the hospital, and that's how it kind of came to be.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. But yeah, that feeling of just not feeling comfortable within yourself can also lead on to then not being able to listen to what's going on around you as well, can't it?
Yeah. I know, like now I have a suitcase ready. That's something that I've learned that I have to do. You know what I mean? I never had to do Olivia because we wasn't in that often.
No.
You know, bless her, kind of thing, you know, and if we did, we'd tend to stay there for a while. But you know what I mean? It was with Daniel, I've learned that, you know, I need to make sure my toothbrush is in there. I mean, I still brush my teeth probably 3 times through the night because I'm scared of speaking to somebody with bad breath. You know what I mean? I have like, and I know it sounds, I think sometimes it's because it's what I can control in the situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's probably where it comes from. You know, it's, you know, and also if I'm talking to a doctor, I don't want to be smelling my own breath, because you know, being in the hospital as well, you know, you're always thirsty because if they dry the areas, different stuff. You know, it's something that I'm very.
I learned over time, like I think there's a blog post on the website as well, but I learned to have like a 1 to 3 day like hold-all emergency bag, which we would grab, and then a backup suitcase for under the stairs, but it was packed at all times. And we had 2 suitcases packed at all times as well. One with predominantly Dave's stuff in and a few bits of mine. One predominantly with my stuff in and a few bits of Dave's, just in case. Like, we had to grab, or one of us pick the wrong thing up, you know. But they are the kind of key things that you kind of have to get in place, really. And to be honest, like, they advise it if you were to go into labour, don't they? Like, this is a good idea to keep under the stairs, whatever. If you've got a child that could drop into emergency care at any point, it's a good idea. And actually, for me, once those bags were washed, tumble dried, repacked and put away under the stairs, I felt like it was a huge cloud over my head. Like, right, if something's going to happen now, we're ready.
Yeah.
It always happened when we weren't ready, always, 100%. But I always felt like, I don't know, the mental clutter was like gone a bit.
Well, so you shouldn't have to think about it. You just grabbed it, didn't you? And that's it. I mean, but I love the fact that you've got one for you and Dave, because that is something that I've been asked to work on, is like letting Alan stay.
Yeah.
Because I don't let him stay, and I, you know, even over I think we had a 3-week period at one point, I didn't come home, and the doctor keeps saying to me, you know, swap with your husband, and control issues.
I was breast pumping for 9 months, so I was pretty much chained to Lydia around the hospital for the first 9 months because she depended on me to eat. And then she'd been airlifted to Liverpool by this point, and she'd come out of a surgery, and I must have picked up one of the chest bugs that were in there. And honestly, I think I was 2 weeks flat out on the sofa in the parents' accommodation in Alderhay. I literally just could not I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't even pick my head. I didn't even know that he'd taken Caitlin over to intensive care to sit with Lydia because I was that poorly. And they were going through this whole no antibiotics. Do you remember when that first came in to stop antibiotics resistance?
Oh yeah.
So I couldn't even get. They were fairly confident. They knew of the kind of top 3 or 4 bugs that were circulating. So they kind of said, but because they were a paediatric hospital, they couldn't treat me. I had to go and see my own person. And even with a letter, they were like, we're not going to give out antibiotics. So I felt really rough for a good 2 weeks. And to be honest, I think it was the biggest blessing for us as a family because I had to take my hands off of it. And Dave had to, like, he's always stepped up, always. He's always been with Lydia and with me and stuff, but he kind of had no choice. He had to fall into it.
Yeah. I think with Olivia, that Alan had to work full time. He was self-employed, so I was just there, and that was it. There was no opportunity to stop over because he had to go to work, and so now it just feels hard for me to do it.
Yeah.
And Daniel was in the first time he was ever in, actually, when we had him. Alan had to take him in because I had a sickness bug, so I couldn't obviously go in. And there was a few incidents that they didn't start certain medication quickly, or they didn't put your stress dose up and different stuff. And so I felt like because I took my hands off the wheel, it hadn't gone where it should have gone. And so obviously psychologically for me, it's like if I don't stay in control, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And I know I need to trust Alan more and do that, something I'm very aware of. I just really.
Do you find though, because I felt really bad for Dave, not in the bigger hospitals, but especially the smaller ones, they would always say, "Hi Dad, where's Mum?"
Yeah.
And Dave would say something like, we had to manage our time like effectively with Lydia. Like you said, we gave ourselves job roles and job positions. So like Dave did obviously all the physical manual handling of her and lifting her. Obviously I lifted her and stuff, but he did the majority of that. He also sorted out all of her medical bins, medical waste. He did all the delivery of oxygen and all the chest physio, because when I'd had this bug in Liverpool, because I hadn't had access to like get into, because I wasn't well enough to see her, he had been given loads of chest physio lessons from Alderhay. So he was already like one step ahead. And I always felt, even though I was as capable as him, I always felt like I was coming under his leadership with chest physio. And I just never felt as confident with her chest as Dave did. So even if I did chest physio, which we both did, I'd always get him to come and check, always. And I don't know how many hospital admissions we've gone to where David said something and they've said, "Oh, what about chest physio?" I said, "Oh, yeah, that's Dad's job." And Dave would tell them, and I would be like, he's telling them, I don't really know. And then they turn to me and go, "Do you think what he said is right? Like, can I just..." Yeah, they'd always double check with me, and I'd be like, "I've literally just told you I don't do that. Like, I don't. This is all Dave's. If you're going to ask me when I did all of her medication, because I was at home more often than Dave, I'd always set the meds out, pre-draw the meds, medication was, and feeding was my thing, physio, manual handling, and the equipment was more Dave's thing.
Yeah.
And he took that burden off me so I could be more of the mother role,
Yeah.
But they would always, and I thought, it's a good job he's as strong as he is, because that could potentially ruin someone's self-confidence.
And
they were like, "Oh, what do you think, Mum?" And I was like, I literally don't know, because I don't do this for her. This is his job.
Yeah. And I think I see that in my marriage quite a lot, actually, the fact that because I was hands-on with Olivia and I knew and I did the research and different stuff, that people would ask me. So Alan took a step back.
Yeah.
And Daniel's, condition being so complex, I did exactly the same. I learnt this, and I learnt this. So Alan would do the sharing, that kind of stuff. But then that I think I've done him a disadvantage in that sense, because I did take over that role. So when, you know, doctors will ask me, but now even Alan, if he's asked, he'll go, I'll check with mum, because he doesn't believe in himself in that way.
Yeah.
And like, that's something, you know, after I've come out of this hospital, this only just that I'm actually going, well, what do you think on this, you know, kind of, what decision would you make? Do you know what I mean?
So
Because
hard.
and it's took COVID actually for me to actually realise that if I was ill, he needs to know, you know, and he would do, and he does know. It's just that he always defers to me.
Yeah.
So I
And
want to.
again, this is why I personally think it's so important to have a medical binder for your child.
Yeah.
Because if you are ever ill, that at least the baseline information can go. Just have it written out somewhere. It doesn't have to be the Advocates and Angels folder. I mean, it is all there to download and print.
Yeah.
And I will happily print it off and post it for like cost price. But it doesn't have to necessarily be it. Just get it in writing somewhere.
Yeah. It's just, you know me. I mean, like I have. One thing that I've done is that I've printed off all Daniel's care plan and his medications on the back. So when the doctors ask me about their care plans or what medications are, I actually just give them a copy.
Yeah.
And it's great because I can't spell how to levetiracetam or whatever kind of thing. So having it in front of them, the doctors can see it, you know. And I also, you know, I always get confused between, you know, I give 5 mils, but then they'll talk about 50 mix or something.
And the other thing is, sorry, the front door was going. The other thing is, some medications are so similar in spelling.
Yeah. So I take that weight off my shoulders. Yes, that's what BT. Do you know what? It's like, it might seem like super organised, but actually, I don't have to think in the situation of the, you know, if I'm panicking or whatever. I can just say, here, have a copy. Do you know what I mean?
I remember ringing an ambulance once, and they said, "What's your address?" I couldn't remember. Yeah. I said, "I actually don't know." He's like, the call handler was like, "You don't know your address?" I was like, "Can you just get here?"
Yeah.
I was looking at Dave, and she, like, it was an emergency situation. I was looking at Dave. He was getting on with what Lydia needed, physio wise and chest wise and oxygen wise. And I was like, "What's our address?" And he was like, "Just get here." Like, all he could say was just get here. And I was like, "Can you just not track it via my phone?" And he was like, "Are you at home?" I was like, I couldn't even answer that at the time because I was so panicked.
Yeah.
But, I just can't get her name and date of birth out of my mouth.
Yeah. Panic, exhaustion, you know, it's, and the you know, when you get, I mean, especially when you get into an emergency situation and they're asking you all these questions, it's very hard to actually, you know, I mean, my heart wants to be my child, not answering these questions.
No.
Do you know what I mean? And I really struggle at that point, and I'm like, yeah, but can you just fix my child? You know, and they're like, well, no, actually, what medications he's on? So I can just go there. You know, it takes that stress away from me.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously if they ask me other questions and stuff, then I can also look at it and actually it reminds me kind of thing. You know, most of the day I can quote you his medications off, you know, verbatim. But when I'm in a stressful situation, you know, I'm looking to remember my name, let alone anything else. And it's like, so that's for me was the big thing is, you know, I have literally his care plan, what's needed when it's needed. And on the back of that, I have all his medications, all the names, all the, you know, literally what they're made up, what I give them kind of thing. And, you know, and I mean, because that's the one thing I do struggle with is when they're trying to translate how they work it out to like the 5 mil that I give, you know. I mean, they kept coming in with his deprimestin, and they were like, you know, we're going to give 40 mics. And I was like, mics? What's a mic, you know? And then I was like, you don't give him 40 mils. My goodness, he won't wait till Christmas, you know. And I was panicking. Well, actually, what they meant was like, it's like
0.4, isn't it?
Well, it was 4 mils he'd have because the tablet is 0.1 mg. But I couldn't work that out at that time. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, don't give him, you know, whatever. And like they tried to give hydrocortisone via IV, and it came and it was like this tiniest amount. And when I'm giving stress hydrocortisone, it's like 6 mils. And like, so I'm seeing this tiny amount, and I'm convinced that they're giving the wrong amount. And I'm like, that's not going to be enough. And I'm going into a panic, and you know, they're trying to explain that it's a different percentage of and stuff, and I couldn't function. It was like, you're not giving him enough, kind of thing. And it's part of me. I mean, part of me wishes that, you know, I had the innocence of a first-time hospital person who goes in and, like, you know, the doctors are saying, yeah,
It's
they're a
in
bit
their hands.
yeah, you know, it's a bit poorly, but we're giving this medication. And the trust that people have, they're like, you know, which they should do, because doctors are doing their best, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I sit there and there was like a, you know, when we used to be on wards, we don't do wards now. Daniel always gets a room because he's such a prince. No, it's just, he catches everything, he's got no immunity. And like literally, I remember sitting there and there was a child there with a chest infection, the same as Daniel. And like the mum was like, yeah, they're giving him this medication, he's doing fine. And I'm like, well, what's his CRP numbers? What's his CO2 numbers? And she was like, what? And I just wanted that innocence for 5 minutes, not to be stressing, you know, what his numbers were. And I think that was the one moment that I actually just think, you know, this life is hard, because when you have some medical knowledge, and which you're going to get as a parent of SEN child, you know, you've got no choice. You either learn it or, you know, your child's going to, you know, you've got to learn it, haven't you? And, you know, and I'll go in and I'll go, you know, they'll go, we're taking blood. Well, what are you testing for? Are you doing his sodium? Are you doing potassium? Are you doing his CRP? Are you checking his electrolytes? You know, everything. And I'm like, whoa, they're the doctors, chill. But I can't, you know, and I'm like, you know, and I'm sitting there getting his results back. And our last admission, one of the, I don't know, the registrars, you know, when they come every 6 months or whatever, he was like, why do you need to know the results? And I was like, so I've told the consultant. And I didn't actually have to say anything because one of the nurses literally ripped him a new one. It was hilarious. She was like, Mum needs to know because Mum's the one that manages all this and this and this and this. She was, we just follow Mum's lead. And I was like, okay. And he went, I'll find them out and come and tell you then, shall I?
love it when you get a new registrar on the team and they like tout, like, you know, so have you ever heard of this condition? I'm like, well, she was born with it, so yeah. Like,
yeah.
Or they'll say, there was one registrar that was like, oh, because I knew, you know your kids well enough, don't you?
Yeah.
Like, and I'd had a look at the charts and everything in the morning, and I was like, oh, we'll be discharged by tomorrow. Like, she, you know, everything's come down. She's on minimal oxygen. Da, da, da. So this reg came over, and he was like, oh, for where we are at the moment, I'd probably be looking for another 6 to 7 weeks in hospital. And I was like, oh, okay. Can I just ask why? And I wasn't rude because I thought, well, maybe he knows something that we don't. Oh, the thing is, we don't send children home with suction units, and if they need regular suction, right, okay. And he said, she's still needing quite a lot of regular suction, so I would say 6 to 7 weeks before that all like clears up and stops. And I just went, okay, thank you, like that.
Yeah.
As he was walking out, he pushed Lydia's like buggy out the way, and he said, oh, is this yours? I said, yeah, it is. And I said, do you want to have a look at the back of it? And it had a suction unit attached. And he was like, I feel like an idiot now. I said, I don't want to be disrespectful, because I do appreciate that the average child wouldn't be sent home with a suction unit. But if Lydia had to wait for suction to stop, we would never leave. So, and we actually got discharged the next day, to be fair. But he was like, oh, but it is, I try and see it as a bit of a, you know, they are just trying to do their best, aren't they? And I don't think they want to fill anyone with false hope that you know, you could go home tomorrow. But it is quite funny.
Yeah. I mean, we've had, like, you know, kind of stuff, you know, like we find that the doctor will come in, or another doctor will come in, and they'll go, I've got some students here, do you mind? And I'm like, well, why is that? And he was like, because you don't see children like Daniel very often. And you know, and for the thing, I'm very proactive in that, because Olivia's condition, when it was diagnosed, no one knew nothing about.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a lot more research and there's a lot more awareness now. And one of the doctors literally went and read, I think it was like a book of conditions.
Yeah.
And walked in, and he turned around and goes, oh, well, she's dying now. I went, what? And she was having seizures, and part of the issue was that she goes blue.
Right.
And they didn't understand about the breath holding and stuff that children were meant to do. So he was convinced, and he actually sent us to, he was the adult ICU, because they thought she was going to need ventilating. And we were quite lucky, that I spoke to a friend who then spoke to a consultant at the children's hospital, who then had her moved because of lack of understanding. And we had an apology from the local hospital, did stuff and stuff. And I understand they didn't know. I mean, this doctor was out of line. But one of the consultants said to me, we don't know, but can you help us learn to know? Because it's our local hospital.
They're the best doctors.
Yeah, and and I can say that about my local hospital, is that they don't have children like Daniel daily.
No.
But they've learned. They're making real efforts to learn, and they work very closely with my children's hospital, so that I don't have to go to the big city hospital.
Yeah.
I can stay local. And I saw that this time again. Sometimes I have to liaise, sometimes I don't. But I will forever be grateful that they do that, because they don't have to, by their generalised wards, they don't have to have children like Daniel. They can actually turn around and say, go to the children's. But they're very proactive. They've done their training for the ports and different stuff. And that makes such a difference to be locally than in the children's. Not.
Oh yeah, because it impacts your everyday life, doesn't it? Being able to be on the doorstep. But
Definitely.
I honestly, when Lydia was little, I was quite keen for the student doctors to be involved, and that actually paid off long term, because by the end of her life, some of them had graduated and become her doctors, or her under doctor. They went. You go from registrar to consultant, don't you?
I think so.
Yeah, some of them
I don't know.
like.
Is it the SCOs or something? There's all these names, and I don't know what level they are, to be honest.
But the people that had been either students had become registrars. The registrars had become the consultants, and they had seen all of the years that we had been saying, she needs this support, she needs that support, and actually, for us, it really did benefit her.
I mean, I love it. Like when I phone my PA unit, and I only say his name, but then you would have to phone to get some bloods, and it was a new team.
Oh, it's so hard.
And so the doctor was like, okay, can you explain, and bless him, he sorted everything I needed, but he had to go away and learn about Daniel first, because I'm there phoning up saying he needs his bloods doing, he needs this, she wants it between this time and this time. I was like just giving my orders out kind of thing, because it come from the children's, and and he was like, well, we don't have to do blood tests just because parents ask. And I was like, do you want to just go and read Daniel's file? And then he come back and he went, yeah, the community nurses are coming out. Bless him. And he was like, and it was bless, they don't understand. And and if every parent phoned up and demanded, I understand that, you can't just demand a blood test. It's only because it's part of Daniel's package that it's there in his plan that I can kind of, but I can't, so it was sometimes you're like, I'm grateful for the ones that I know, and then I do find it funny with the ones that don't know. I mean, I'm sure they send the student nurses into us on purpose, because Daniel's heart rate's very low, and that's part of who he is. It's his condition.
Oh, the amount of times the emergency cord has been pulled, because Lydia used to have a resting heart rate of 60, 55 to 65. Yeah. And then if she went into her sleep, sometimes it would go as low as 11.
Oh, but
and if you had a student nurse or someone in, you'd be like, oh, hi, all right, I'm just here to do the IVs, right, okay. And you kind of like semi-drop off again. And the next minute, the cord has been pulled, everyone's running in the room, and I'm like almost having heart failure in the corner, like, what is going on? Oh my gosh, something's really bad's happened. Oh, her heart rate dropped to 11, and the whole team were going, oh, okay. Just walk out again.
It's like that. It's like,
really well.
I think it was the biggest, our ward, they're the PA, they say one of the best questions a nurse can ask is, what is normal for your child?
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't ask that. And so
we've got a section of that in our hospital passport, actually. Your child's normal, so their normal SATs, their normal heart rate, their normal CO2, because that was another thing. Oh, we're going to go and intubate her now because her CO2 is 10. And I'd be like, brilliant, it's 10. Like 10's really good. It's really, if her
Yeah.
CO2 is 10, we're having a great day. What?
Yeah,
Well, this would be
yeah.
the threshold to get a transfer to intense. No.
Yeah, I think that's it. Every child is unique, and like say, Daniel's heart rate, it doesn't go as low as Lydia's. He likes to be like, he has gone down to 30 in a deep sleep of pure exhaustion, but he tends to hang around 45, 50 in the sleep.
It's still low though.
Oh, but he has got hypothalamic dysfunction, so his temperature is exactly the same. So like,
Is he
if
quite low on the temperature front?
our normal temp, he's probably like 35.7. It's pushing 36. If you've come from the winter out from the cold, there's a good chance we'd be lower. So obviously you have the poor student nurses that come in, they'll take his temp and they're like, okay,
he's hypothermic.
Yeah, I'm not happy with this. And then they'll check his heart rate and like they've run out the room. And like, and then like the nurses will come in who know Daniel and they go, well, you should have asked Mom, what's Daniel's normal? I think that was one of the biggest lessons for student nurses and for doctors, is that every child is unique. And so like when Daniel's temperature is 37 or 37.1, we know there's there's a fever somewhere, something's going on, and if his heart rate's in the hundreds, what's going on, kind of thing, and it's and I think we as parents, we have to learn what is normal for our children. We have to advocate for what is normal for our children, and that sometimes can be exhausting, so I think I think we're going to have to end this at some point, aren't we? Because I could talk to you all today. Is that don't doubt yourself. Your child better. It takes a lot of courage to advocate for your child against doctors and stuff, but you will find it.
But it is okay to as well.
Definitely.
And it is also okay to highlight if you feel there is an undercurrent of discrimination going on, and you can't put your finger on it. As soon as something has been said, repeat it back to them. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with actually calling it out either. It doesn't have to be aggressive, but you can say, is this because my child is not neurotypical that you are using this type of language towards them? And that's not just doctors either.
That's that can be family, friends, I mean,
sometimes the best tool I've given is, can you just stop? Like I said earlier, can you take Lydia's name out of this and replace it with yours and just see how you feel for a few seconds? Some people have cried.
But I think it's a really good point though, isn't it? It's like, don't dismiss my child because of her disabilities.
And don't disregard our feelings as a parents either, because that child is our child. Yeah.
And we're not numb to the pain that they're going through, or this isn't just another hospital visit. We may have had 15 that year, but the 16th can still break our hearts. Do you know what I mean? And if you're someone that if you're a family or friend of somebody that's in hospital a lot, don't assume that they're used to it. You know what I mean? Reach out as if it was their first time. You know what I mean? I desperately wanted my child to have a balloon. How sad is that?
Well, this is why I've made certificates of courage recently, because I realised Lydia was never given one. I was going through Lydia's stuff the other day, and she had one from Build-A-Bear for a bear, and I thought she was never actually given a certificate after everything that she'd been through. We'd taken her to the dentist, and she couldn't, for whatever reason, the dentist didn't give her a sticker. They given Caitlin one. So I had to go back in, and my mum was like, nope, not good enough. I'm like, off she went. Excuse me, can Lydia have a sticker, please?
I think this is it, there should be checked just as equal. I mean, the main times we go on ward, and someone gets a certificate for having a needle or whatever, and I'm like, Daniel's just had 7. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's just, so, recognise that as well. And don't, I think, it's, but just talk about it. Just talk with friends, with family. Don't take it in personally.
And it doesn't have to be at the jugular, does it?
Oh no,
it doesn't have to be like, you can just say, look, this was said, and I'm not having a go at you, but it's just not sat right with me since it's been said. Or there are ways of being able to bring it up.
Yeah.
My husband. You'd be surprised how many people will be absolutely appalled that they've even said it. or that
Definitely.
it's come across in that way, because a lot of people just don't even recognise that it has been said.
I always have this. I mean, my husband will laugh at me because I could be really cross at somebody and you wouldn't know, because I do this kill you with kindness thing. You know, it's like if I'm talking to professionals, I go, I understand you're extremely busy, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing, but you did say you were going to do this. You know, and like Alan's like, you said you were going to do this, and why haven't you done it? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, and it's like I'm freaky. So it's like you make me scary because you're so polite, but you're actually calling them out. And I think sometimes, you know, in different situations, you know, getting angry blows its subject. It ends the conversation anyway.
It took me a very long time to not get angry. Very long time. I still haven't got that. There's still parts of me now where I'm just like, no, had enough. You've just done, you know. But I think that's just who I am, you know.
I think, you know, and vice
there
versa,
are
I
ways
need to get
be-
angry more. You know, vice versa, I do need to get angry more.
There are ways of being.
It's just, you know, I don't know. I mean, you know, it is obviously Children's Mental Health Week, and it's actually quite nice to see the fact that people are recognising the value in our children's mental health. I mean, like from my childhood, I mean, obviously my childhood, you know, was different, but it was not a discussion. You know, kids just put up and shut up, you know, and so it's nice that now that people are understanding it. And like, you know, I'm quite cross that we hear this, you know, the COVID, you know, scenario, children's mental health and this and this. I mean, the mental health crisis was way before COVID. It's been underfunded for so many years.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, so we can blame COVID as much as you like, and if blaming COVID means that you're going to invest money in it, fine, blame COVID. But at the end of the day, this has been an issue for a while. But as a parent with a child with SEN, and we talk about self-care and different stuff, self-care is what makes you happy, what gives you peace, be it a shower, be it a face mask, be it, I don't know, a McDonald's
walk,
burger.
a book, a podcast, anything,
you know,
really. Cooking from scratch, sometimes cleaning and hoovering.
Yeah, my husband would really wish that was my self-care.
Hashtag hinching. But, you know, some people do find, sometimes it's painting and decorating, sometimes it's colouring. It's just finding that
what suits you,
being able to escape without escaping, isn't it?
Yeah.
And being able to just do something that brings you a little bit of joy whilst everything else is going on.
This is it. And, you know, and it's sometimes like I always used to think, you know, if I take that day out, the amount that stuff that I'd have to pick up would make that day out irrelevant.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or even worse. So that's why it doesn't work for me. But like I said, you know, like I can, you know, I like to read, you know, an hour reading, but I can do that when Daniel's asleep rather than actually think I need to get up and clean the kitchen or something.
And you can do it next to him or with him in your arms as well, isn't it?
You know, and me and Daniel and the Yorkshire vet, we have our self-care there. You know, I need some more new ones because I'm fed up with watching the same ones with Daniel. That's irrelevant. You know, but it's, you know, people say treat yourself. To me, that's not a designer handbag. It's a new book. You know, that's who I am. 100%. You know, people like Alan will say to me, "You're so tired. Why are you reading before bed?" Because that's my time. That's me just focusing on the book and not having to, you know, try and slow my mind down. That's what works for me. But it might not work for others. They may have to listen to music, or, you know, people say, "Well, put your earphones in, listen to podcasts." Really? Should I just ignore the baby monitor all night? Wouldn't work for me. You know, there's different things in there, and I think finding your way is important. Don't judge yourself by anybody else, because we're all surviving the only way that we know best. Reach out for help. Advocates and Angels is a fantastic resource. You know, I've asked questions on there. People have asked questions on there. You know, I've made friends that I wouldn't have come across in normal life, because, you know, different, which is brilliant. Be organised is probably one of my best tips, but actually give yourself a break when you don't be.
Yeah. It's so hard, isn't it? It's all about balance. It's just all about balance and just doing what is right. We are a really small community, and we're a really small website. I've only haven't been able to do a great deal, but I'm hoping over the time that it can be a platform for parents to just come together and just know that no one's perfect. Like, the resources might look like we're trying to shove perfection. Yeah, we're not. It's not about that. I am far from perfect. I think over time I've just realised actually I'm helping my future self by filling these in. But again, there's no pressure to do it either, is there? Do you know what I mean? It is what works for you.
That's it. And also, the whole resources, some things won't work for you, but some things will. So take what works for you. You know what I mean? I'm never going to meal plan.
But if you, like, for instance, if you do need tailor-made resources, just email, because I can I might not be able to, but like, one of the mums just sent me this little like sketch, like I could do with this box and this box for my daughter. So I sent it over and I managed to like pretty much mock it up and send it back. So anything like that personalized, because no one's the same.
That's it, isn't it? So, but like it's, Advocates and Angels is there, and we're hoping to do more of this, but we're open to conversations that people want to have, and definitely
it's education and awareness as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and support.
Because
the one thing that has got me going for all of this, keep me going, is the people around me. And not literally around me as in like the room next to me. It's like, I know I can text you and say, pray me through this. I need prayer here. I couldn't sleep in hospital. You sent me a voice message that allowed me to breathe. I'll be forever grateful for that, but that might not work for somebody else. They might want to talk about something completely different. But the support network's there. And I think that's the best thing with this life, is having people that get it.
I just think it's normalizing, like, you've got a medically complex like unicorn, so did I, but like they're not the same. They're like completely different. But just knowing that there's somebody else out there that has as many complex issues, is also going through the grief processes. Like, I rang you, didn't I? Like, I feel like this is happening, and you're like, oh, that's totally grief. And I was like, is it? I was like, it doesn't feel like grief. And you were like, yeah. I went through a similar situation where this was happening, and I was like, oh, this is normal. And I think just normalizing like this trauma and the grief, it instantly gave me like you said, like a breath to go, oh, I'm not losing the plot. And it's just giving each other that support to know that we don't live in each other's pockets. I don't live in anyone's pockets on the group either, but it's just knowing that if there was an issue, I could just go, guys, what do you think? And the Instagram family are like the people that I follow and follow back, they're just lovely.
And I think that's it, is find your people. And that might not be children with the same parents of children with SEN, that might not be children, parents of children with the same condition as yours. It's just your people. But for me, it is refreshing that that I can have conversations with people and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you have to live this life, or how do you do this?
Oh, sorry, you're inspirational.
Oh no. No, I'm not inspirational. My son's my son, and I'm doing whatever I need to do to raise him. You know what I mean? It's and it's, like a total different thing, but obviously adopting a child had different
connotations and different language.
Also, and also actually quite a lot of judgment. It was the fact, well, you can't actually moan your child because you chose to adopt him. And I'm like, what? Really?
Oh, that's madness. But that's like saying parenting is easy just because you chose to adopt.
I know.
Like, all the problems of raising any child has gone away because you adopted.
Yeah, and
it's like, that's ridiculous.
I know. I think it's the fact that because you've adopted, you've chose to adopt, and so you should be grateful. And I am thankful for Daniel every single minute of every day. But that doesn't mean that sometimes I don't need support or it's hard. And also, adoption comes with a lot more complex emotional baggage. Unfortunately, that's the only way to put it. You know what I mean? Because Daniel didn't have that beginning with me. And having Advocates and Angels, I mean, it's brilliant for me because I get to step into 2 different camps. I get to be Olivia's mom and grieve Olivia in the one group, and then different for
Daniel's
Daniel.
mum.
Yeah, in another
With all
group.
the other complex caterpillars.
Yeah, it is, it's like being in the butterfly group allows me to just be Olivia's mom and to grieve and to, to be joyful and remembering, that kind of stuff. But then being a caterpillar means that I can actually have that different role as well. So I think it's wonderful, if I can remember which groups and which, because I'm useless at that. But yeah, it's been really, I think, I really admire you because you could have just walked away from this life completely and just gone back to typical. Obviously, Caitlin's not typical, but you know what I mean. But, Lydia's legacy and what you're doing is incredible, and I really admire you for that. I just wish you'd give yourself a break a few more times,
I think I was in such a naive bubble before she existed. Like, I just didn't ever think that this life could ever touch me. It would never affect me. Like, that was always happening in somebody else's camp, always somebody else's business. And it wasn't like, like I pitied anyone or anything. It just never affected me. So why would I ever think about it? And then, there was just a lot to do with a lot of issues coming up over and over with her self-worth and value before she was even born. And just worth and value, and like not even calling her Lydia, they called her the Dandy Walker baby for the first couple of days that she was born. And it was just really like, wow, this is not like, before having Lydia, I lived in a society that stood up against like any type of hatred. That's like, I think I was just naive. I'm always the type of person, because I wouldn't think like that.
Yeah.
I believe everybody else is on the same moral compass as me. And I know that's incredibly naive, but I was only 26, 27, and I'd like been very like, not career focused, but like I knew the job that I wanted to be in. I moved to Wales to be with Dave. Like, I got my job, we bought our first house. We were just kind of like in our bubble.
I think
I just always believed that, like, I didn't, probably very naively just believed, because I would never speak to someone or treat someone or even think about someone in that way. That's how the rest of the world operated. And then
honestly,
to like, the day that she was born, like, this is the Dandy Walker baby, I was like, what? Like, her name's Lydia.
their children, like, the children first, condition second. That's my,
that was really hard. And then I think as well, it was like it was a struggle to determine whether they were talking about acute illnesses and an actual disability versus like discriminative. Like, I couldn't work out the balance either. Like, I had to accept overnight that she had disabilities. But at the starting point, that was no different than them calling her the Dandy Walker baby. Whereas over the years, like I said, like I got educated, if they were to call her the Dandy Walker child, instantly I would have just nipped that in the bud there and then. Like, that is just so discriminative. But at the time, I was just finding my feet.
I think back to how naive I was. You know what I mean? Even in the world of disability, like you said, I just believe that everyone was proactive for our child. And then I remember someone, and I remember it specifically because it was talking about organ transplantation. And I was talking to a mum with a child with Down syndrome, and they'd got a failing organ, and obviously they don't go on the register. And I was like, what? And they were like,
it's just
no.
mind-blowing.
And I couldn't comprehend the fact that they didn't value this person. And then, and like we can go into a total ethical discussion about this, because you got murderers in prison who've done horrific things,
heinous things.
Yeah, and they'd be on the list. And, you know, it was just such an eye-opener to me that the way that discrimination, disability exists,
Yeah.
and it's beyond just that, you know, not being able to get into a building or being changed. I mean, those are massive issues anyway, but
Yeah,
I'm saying,
they're huge.
yeah, but it's beyond that. It's just about actual people's understanding of the
I
value of our
I
children.
think though, once the value and the language change, the accessibility and all the other practical things will change.
It should be that, you
Um,
know, if I'm building a new building and I want anybody, you know, it's going to be open to the public. Well, the public actually means those that are disabled, those that are
it
in a
means
wheelchair.
everyone.
It's everybody inclusively. And until we advocate and we can change that,
Yeah.
then I think, you know, it won't be the first
But it
fall.
starts with a mindset,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Then if you need a door to let people in, you need a door with a ramp to let everybody in. And
Yeah.
that should be what the world looks like, but it doesn't. And we're just
Yeah.
going to have to keep on fighting and advocating and being part of the change. Because we've got children with disabilities, or the legacy of children with disabilities will be what we fight for. And I better go and look after my child with disabilities now. But it's
You
been
know, I've got to go get some lunch on.
lovely. And
It has
I'm
been
just,
lush, and we'll try and do this again.
yeah.
Now we've actually got the technical side a little bit more, a little bit more. I don't even know what the word is. Together.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you
may have to
to
start
my
giving
friend.
ourselves time limits though, because I think we've nattered for a long time.
I know, nearly 2 hours. Ah, well, it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
You can have it in your self-care hour for the week. No, I'm joking. But yeah, no, like, I'm really grateful for Dave. I'm really grateful for you doing this. I'm really grateful for
Pleasure.
my friend Jake to be able to give me all the advice on the line to be able to get all this done. So yeah, it's a team effort, guys, and I'm really grateful for everyone.
And if anybody wants any discussions chatted about, we're willing to.
Yeah, just send us a message. We'll get on it.
Yeah. So take
We
care.
can even, yeah, take care. I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.